Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we're just going to wait a couple minutes, let people join in, inshallah, then we'll start. And just finish setting up here, inshallah. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, hamdan kathiran tayyiban wa barakan fihi, wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we are just a few weeks away from the month of Ramadan, inshallah, actually about this week, next week, so 3 weeks away from the month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is still coming upon us. It's gotten here faster than we would like, and it's getting here in a situation that we probably would not prefer. But alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reach the month of Ramadan, allow us to get through this month in the safest possible way that we can, and inshallah lift this trial from us as soon as possible so that we can get back to our normal life, especially with the masjid, as soon as possible. Today and the next Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, what we want to focus on are some of the rulings around Ramadan, meaning the fiqh aspect of Ramadan, the ritual aspect of Ramadan, and just a reminder, a review, and also some time for Q&A about questions that people have during Ramadan, about making sure they're doing their fasting properly, that they're setting up their day properly, that they're aware of what does and does not break their fast, who is and is not exempt from fasting, etc., etc., etc. So today, inshallah, what I hope to cover, number one, is the just some of the basics. So the obligation of fasting, who is obligated to fast, how do we start the month of Ramadan, about the moon fighting, right? Starting and ending the fast, who is obligated to fast, who is exempt from fasting, and then a little bit about the suhoor and the iftar, inshallah ta'ala. And then next week is when we'll get into other things like what breaks the fast, what ruins the fast, how do you make up missed days, and all that kind of stuff. Inshallah, we'll do that portion next week. We'll try to get as much as we can from what I just mentioned. Today, inshallah ta'ala, just some of the basics, and we'll keep the questions inshallah relevant to today's topics. And so next week when we hit, if you have a question about making up missed days, for example, we'll hit that next week, because we'll cover making up missed days next week, inshallah ta'ala. All right, so we'll go ahead and start. Let me get one more sip in of my coffee. For those wondering what my mug says, I know at least in our Tuesday class, you're wondering what it said. Anyways, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All right, so the month of fasting, which is Ramadan, the 9th lunar month on the lunar calendar, why do we fast this month? It is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has prescribed fasting in the month of Ramadan. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 183 to 186. So that's Surah number 2, ayat 183 to 186. You want to look over these verses yourself as well. You want to go over them, understand their meanings. A lot of the rulings that we get, they're derived from these ayat as well. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That all you who believe, all you who have faith, all you who claim to be believers, right? This is how we understand these ayat. يا أيها الذين آمنوا, it's a call to those who are faithful in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم. Fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon those before you. لعلكم تتقون, so that you may attain this quality of taqwa. And we've talked about this before in our live streams. We talked about it in khutbahs before. I can maybe try and link a whole khutbah to this that we've done. It's on our YouTube channel about God consciousness or righteousness, or being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the purpose of Ramadan is to help us practice being more obedient, more aware of Allah and more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a natural, forced outcome. You see this amazing thing happen in Ramadan. It's absolutely beautiful. Everyone, more people become obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The masajid are more full. Everyone is fasting. People that may not even pray normally are praying, right? So it's a beautiful thing how this season that comes upon us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it in a way that it makes obedience easy for us and allows us to taste what it's like to be more attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by responding to things that He has asked us to do. Now, it's really interesting that in Ramadan, we're actually giving up things that are perfectly halal for us otherwise. So we're giving up eating and drinking in the hours of the day until Maghrib time, which otherwise is perfectly fine. There's nothing haram about eating and drinking in the daytime. Things that are good for you, things that you're allowed to eat. But in Ramadan, it becomes haram. In Ramadan, something that is halal becomes haram. And what you see are people without question, following this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's amazing, right? And so Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, look, what you do in Ramadan is a practice of how you should try to be the rest of the year, right? And when it comes to the rest of the year and other things, sometimes things which are clearly haram, people have a lot of questions about, can I do this or can I not, or how can I get to this or how can I not? But in Ramadan, something that is purely halal, explicitly halal, becomes haram for a limited time, and we all do it, and we all don't question why, right? And it's an easier understanding as to the benefits that we get from fasting, right? But the point is that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to do, there's a benefit in it. Whatever He's told you to stay away from, there is a harm in it, and we have to have that trust in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is a time to practice that understanding. And then he continues, he says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. And fasting has been prescribed for a fixed number of days, and this is 29 or 30 according to the month. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. However, whoever is sick, whoever is ill, is a marid, أو على سفر, or they are traveling, meaning they are not in their homes, they're not residents, they're traveling, they're out. فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Then Allah has made it easy. He says, look, that's fine. If it's difficult for you in these circumstances, then you can do the number of days you missed from the rest of the year. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And upon those who are able to bear it with difficulty, who are able to bear fasting, but it would be difficult for them, it would be harmful to them, but they're not traveling or sick, but they're not traveling at least. فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ, and this refers to elderly people here as well. Then they give a fidya, they give a something on behalf of fasting, طَعَامُ مِسْكِين, which is a food for one day. Per day of missed fasting, and we'll get into these things inshallah. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. And whoever gives more, it is better for them. وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And if you fast, it is better for you, even if it is difficult for you. Fasting is difficult for you. إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, if you really truly understood. And then he says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was sent down. The month in which the Quran was sent down. هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ, as a form of guidance for mankind, a clarification of guidance, and a criterion, something that distinguishes between right and wrong. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. So whoever witnesses from amongst you the month, then he will fast it, right? He is going to fast it. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. Then he repeats his portion. Whoever is ill or traveling, then a number of days from outside the month. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. And again, Allah Azza wa Jal gives us this beautiful principle in the Quran. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah wants for you ease. Allah does not intend for you difficulty, right? He intends for you ease. It does not intend for you difficulty. In relation to what? In relation to you being able to be obedient to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are told to fast a month, but if you're sick, Allah doesn't want to put a difficulty on you. If you're sick and you fast, you'll get more sick and you could possibly, lead to your own loss of life. That is not what Allah is intending here. So if you're sick, you make up the days, right? If you're traveling and you don't know if you're going to get your food, again, traveling in those days was even more difficult. If you don't know where you're going to get your food from, if someone's going to host you, if you're going to find a place to stay, you have so many other worries, then don't worry about it. You can make up the fasting from a different number of days. Allah intends for you ease, does not intend for you difficulty. And this is a principle we find throughout the Sharia. We find throughout the Sharia But again, it's a principle we want to consult our scholars on, not just kind of come to ourselves, right? وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةِ. The important thing is Allah wants you to complete the number of days. وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةِ. The number of days of fasting, 29 or 30. عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. And that you are making takbir of Allah, that you are glorifying Allah because He has guided you. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And also fasting has been prescribed upon you so that you may be grateful. Be grateful for the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Then right after these rulings on fasting in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And if my servants ask you concerning me, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, then tell them, I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِي فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. Then let them respond to my call. I am near to them. I respond to the da'wah of the da'i, the call of the caller when he calls upon me. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one that responds to your dua when you call upon Him. I believe it was last week we talked about dua on Sunday. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي, so that let the people respond to me and have faith in me so that they may be rightly guided. And so after these ayat on Ramadan and fasting, this is where this ayah comes, where Allah says, when they ask you about me, tell them I am near. I am extremely near. I respond to the caller when they call, and let them respond to my call and be grateful, and so that they can be guided. And so there's a connection, clear connection between doing what we're supposed to do in the month of Ramadan of fasting and abstaining from what we're supposed to abstain from and following these rules, and then dua. Right, there's that connection with dua and coming closer to Allah and calling out to Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responding to us. And so we know that Ramadan is also a month of dua. So that is the obligation of fasting from the Quran. And from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the 5 pillars of Islam. Buniya al-Islamu ala khams, that Islam is built upon 5. This is where we get the 5 pillars of Islam from. And he mentioned all 5 of them, and he said, and to fast Ramadan, wa an tasum Ramadan, and that you fast the month of Ramadan, and that you make Hajj to the house, whoever is able to do so. All of these are mentioned in this hadith as well. Some of the quick benefits of fasting, we understand that we do this because Allah Azza wa Jalla wants us to. There's a lot of spiritual benefits, but there are also physical benefits as well. For more details of that, inshallah, we have the workshop coming up on the 18th, and we'll have a nutritionist and a doctor, inshallah, joining us that can give us a lot of those health benefits, inshallah ta'ala. But we do want to cover the spiritual benefits of fasting. The first one is purification of our soul through developing self-control. And that is just, subhanAllah, something extremely obvious in this month of Ramadan that we experience. We are choosing not to eat and drink when we regularly can. We are choosing to stay hungry when we can have a snack, right? And right now, in these times when you guys are cooped up at home, we're probably eating a lot more because it's just so we have nothing else to do. So we're just grabbing food and eating it, right? But come Ramadan, we're not going to do that. We're going to choose consciously to not put food and drink in our mouth. So there's this lesson in purification of our soul by number one, getting rid of bad manners, because there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man lam yada' az-zur wal-'amala bihi falaysa lillahi haja fi an yatruka ta'amahu wa sharabah." That if a person does not give up lying and acting upon lies while they're fasting, then Allah has no reason for them or no need for them to give up their food or drink. Meaning the purpose, one of the reasons we fast in Ramadan is to learn self-control, to improve our character. So if we're still going to be liars and cheaters and abusers in Ramadan, then in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no there's what's the point of us giving up our food and drink? What are we attaining out of giving up our food and drink? They still have to, because that's what they're supposed to do. But if you're not purifying your character in Ramadan, then you're not getting one of the benefits of this month. Controlling excesses is another benefit, right? So we tend to eat a lot more than we need to. We tend to spend time in things that we don't need to. We tend to behave in ways that we don't need to. So there are different forms of excesses that we get involved in, right? And so Ramadan gives us a chance to control those excesses. We utilize our time a lot better. We're waking up earlier in the morning. We're reading Quran. We're spending more time in the Masjid at night, right? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us back to our Masjid soon, inshallah. But we're utilizing our time in a lot more productive ways, right? And we tend to schedule out our time because we need to do family activities, we need to do, dinner with this and that and all that kind of stuff. So we're getting a lesson in controlling a lot of the excesses that we tend to waste, our resources on in Ramadan. And again, so if we're not benefiting in that way, we need to make sure that we're scheduling ourselves out in Ramadan so that we're making the absolute most of it that we can. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna shaytana yajri min ibn Adam majra dam," that shaitan runs through, the son of Adam like the flow of his blood. Meaning the shaitan is constantly whispering and, inviting you to do things, here and there. But in the month of Ramadan, we have the hadith where we know that, shaitan is locked away. And these are the maradatul jinn, the major influencers, as you can say, right? You guys have Instagram and you have your influencers. So you have your major influencers from amongst the jinn, the ones that cause the biggest problems. And so they are the ones that are locked away, right? They are the ones that are locked away, which is why you find it easier to wake up early in the morning for Fajr, or even before Fajr, right? Spend more time at night praying, reading Quran more than you usually would, not eating and drinking, being able to control yourself in that regard as well. And so these are some of the benefits we get through Ramadan in learning lessons of self-control. And this is also what is referred to, a portion of what is referred to as zuhd. It's translated as asceticism, but zuhd is basically understanding that, you're going to prefer things that are going to help you in your hereafter rather than things that are going to satisfy your desires in this world. And that is, coming to that understanding and that type of living is what is called zuhd, and emptying the heart of the love and desire of this world, etc., etc. All right, so now let's get into some of the moon fighting stuff here. Bismillah. I need some sip of my coffee. How do we start the month of Ramadan? Actually, I'm going to ask this question to you guys for the comments. Let's get you guys commenting here. How do we start the month of Ramadan? What do you guys know about that? I know there's a lag between when I speak and when the live stream actually puts it on, so give a little time. But put in the comments there, how do you think we start the month of Ramadan? Moon sighting, or finishing the month of Sha'ban. Good. What about sighting the moon? Why is there always an issue in when Ramadan starts and when it doesn't start? MashaAllah, intention, subhanAllah. That's perfect. You definitely have to have the intention for the month of Ramadan, right? And that's one of the things we'll get into about when we start the fasting. But the actual month itself, when it begins, right? You have this tension, your guys are up the night before and then trying to figure out, is it starting, is it not starting? You're waiting for that email. How are we deciding? Cooking and freezing samosa. That's got to be Sister Lubna. Yeah. No, setting goals is good, but again, I'm talking about the physical. So the moon sighting is what I'm talking about, right? We're talking about the moon sighting. How do we know that Ramadan has actually physically begun? And it is moon sighting. And so when it comes to the moon sighting, this is where, everybody's got a lot of opinions and views, etc. And there are certain important things to understand, but I'll give you the basics here first. The Prophet ﷺ said about starting the months, all the Islamic months, right, and even the month of Ramadan, he said, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi fa in ghummi alaykum fa akmilu al-adad." And there are different narrations that have different wordings that are used, and so, but I'm just sharing one of them here. But basically, the Prophet ﷺ said that you start your fast when you see it. When you see it. And he's talking about the it here is the moon. The new moon that is born. So sumu li ru'yatihi, when you see the new moon, for the month of Ramadan, that is when you start fasting. وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, and then you end your fasting when you see the new moon for the next month, right? Ramadan and Shawwal, right? فَإِنْ غُمِّيَ عَلَيْكُمْ, so 29 days have gone by, and if it's cloudy and you cannot see, because maybe it's time after 29 days you want to see the new moon, فَإِنْ غُمِّيَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَكْمِلُوا الْعَدَدِ, then you complete the number of days, 30 days, right? So you complete the 30 days. So you wait 29 days. Once you've sighted the moon, you wait 29 days, you go through your fasting on the 29th, what would be the 30th day, you check at that night, and if you cannot see the moon or you don't see the moon, then you complete 30, right? And so this was how the Prophet ﷺ in his time, they would start and end the fasting. It was by observation, by observing the moon. And another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is as-sawmu yawma tasumun wal-fitru yawma tuftirun wal-adha yawma tudahun. This is a very important hadith, and I'll tell you why in a second here. That fasting, or Ramadan, or the month of fasting, yawma tasumun, or the day that you start your fasting, is the day that you all are fasting. When the day that you break your fast, or when you stop fasting, meaning you have your Eid, is the day that everybody breaks their fast and everybody stops fasting. Wal Adha, Eid al Adha, which is in the time of Hajj, and Wal Adha Yawma Tudahun, that is the day that the people are slaughtering and sacrificing, right? And so it's interesting that in the first hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, you start your fasting by sighting it, you end your fasting by sighting the moon of the next month. And in this hadith is saying your day of fasting begins when the people are fasting, and your Ramadan ends when the people end Ramadan. And your Eid al-Adha is the day that the people that are at Hajj are they're the ones slaughtering, or the people that are the people themselves are slaughtering on that day for Eid. And so we're going to explain these two things inshallah ta'ala quickly. So number one, the basics of the month of Ramadan, starting the month of Ramadan, is by sighting the moon, right? So either you sight the moon yourself, you are informed by a witness of sighting, which is how most of us depend on starting and ending the month of Ramadan. We depend on the bodies around the world that will sight the moon and tell us we have sighted the moon, or by the month of Sha'ban being a total of 30 days. Nobody sighted the moon wasn't visible anywhere, and so 30 days go by, and everybody starts fasting now. Then you also have this issue of al-hisab al-falaki, of calculations, right? So we now have the ability to calculate exactly, precisely, pretty much, when the new moon is going to be born, when is it going to be sightable, when is it not going to be sightable, and then so you have a lot of issues between different opinions out there that, well, do we sight the moon ourselves? Can we rely upon calculations? Can we do a combination of one or the other? Do we do only our local sighting, meaning we're not going to care about what every other part of the world saw? We're going to see the moon for ourselves, or can we follow global sighting, right? And I'll just say it here, these are, it's really tough. It's a really tough time to live in, where you have so many multiple opinions over one simple thing that we're supposed to do, right? But just to make it easy, this is why the Prophet ﷺ, to make it easy on the people, he said, as-sawm yawma tasubun, right? Don't worry about it. Don't get so caught up into it. Your fasting is the day when your people are fasting. Your ending of fasting is the day your people are ending their fasting, right? So what we're responsible to do as normal, everyday, average people is follow what our community follows. It's just basically do whatever it is that our community is doing. So if they're doing local sighting, if that's what your community is doing, you do local sighting. If they're going off of global sighting, you go off of global sighting. If they're basing it off of their calculations, you follow and you go off of their calculations. These are all ijtihadi issues. These are all issues that scholars can come to different opinions on. And basically, it's not that Ramadan is happening with like a 1 week gap in any of these opinions. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is still happening in the Ramadan. And so we don't want to get too caught up into these issues, except for the people that are responsible for making these decisions. They need to do their best to make sure that they're making the right decisions, inshallah ta'ala. But basically, one of the, if you follow the view, or if you follow the citing of any authoritative body around the world, inshallah ta'ala, that is responsible for citing for the Muslims, even in their locality, that, according to the global citing opinion, would be enough for you. And again, I don't want to get into too many details for this, because again, the Prophet ﷺ made it easy, and he told us, look, your fasting is the day that your people are fasting, you're ending the fasting, etc. We've mentioned that hadith. So inshallah, the way we tend to do it here is we tend to rely on one of the bodies around the world that's responsible for the sighting, and that if your Masjid in the North Fulton area, they follow the sighting reports of Saudi Arabia. Many countries in the world actually follow the sighting reports of Saudi Arabia. Whether or not it's the best way to do things is a different thing. But the fact that we're, at least organized on one view for our community in our area, that is the more important thing, because that aspect of having fasting together as a community is extremely, extremely important, which is why the Prophet ﷺ said what he said. So again, as an individual, you fast with the people and you break your fast with the people. Now, so the month of Ramadan has started. We're going to start and end the day of fasting, right? So how do we know, or what tells us that we start at, we stop eating at Fajr time and then we start eating at Maghrib time? And it is the ayah in the Quran in Surah Baqarah, the next ayah again after what we read in the beginning, ayah number 187, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل. So now we're starting our fasting, right? In the morning time. When do we do this? Surah Baqarah tells us, and eat and drink, meaning in the nighttime, until the white thread of dawn becomes distinct to you from the black thread of night. Then complete the fast until the night, which is sunset. So night in Islam starts at when the sun sets. That is what we call the nighttime, right? And that is when our day actually starts. So at Maghrib time is when the next day actually starts. Now we have a question here that comes up a lot, and that is, well, which Fajr time do I follow and do I stop eating at? Because when I get the schedule from one masjid, it's at 5:30. When I get the schedule from another masjid, it's at 5:20. When I get a schedule from another masjid, it's at 5:24, right? So for one day, you can have different Fajr times depending on where you're getting these times from. When you go to any of your apps that calculate the times and you go to calculation method, you get a bunch of options, right? And when you look at some of those options, the details, you see that it's based on a difference of how many degrees the sun is below the horizon, etc. If you're a part of our Sacred Link class, we talked a lot about Salah timings and how do they calculate Salah timings. And so we talked about Salatul Fajr specifically in that class. But basically speaking, again, what you want to do here is, again, follow that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. You follow the community that you follow, and you go with what the community has provided for you in terms of the salah table, the community that you tend to follow normally, the method of calculation that you tend to follow normally. The reason for the difference of opinion is in the understanding of this ayah, right? حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ, until the white thread of dawn becomes becomes clear from the black thread of night. And so what qualifies it as being clear? Is it when it first appears? Is it when it rises up a little bit? So scholars have different understandings of this. That's why you have an earlier time and a later time, right? The one that we follow at RCM is what on your calculation or your Salah time apps will be called the North American method. And that is at the setting of Fajr time for 15 degrees, right? That is the one that we've always followed at RCM, and that's the one that we continue to make our Salah charts on. And you'll find that that's a later start time for Fajr than the other calculations, right? And so that's, but it is one of the standard times of calculating prayer times, and that's the one that we follow. So again, don't beat yourself up over it. Just rely on what your community has given you, because they've made the decisions, and it's a valid decision. It counts. Your fasting is absolutely fine. Some people will start their fast earlier than the actual Fajr time anyways, just out of caution. It's fine if you want to do that. It's fine if you want to take a precautionary step, but don't push people otherwise, just to because it is allowed to eat all the way up until the actual Fajr time. So that's how we start our fasting, and then we end our fasting at Maghrib time. As soon as the adhan for Maghrib goes off, that is the time you can break your fast. Having the intention for fasting the night before, it's very important. The Prophet ﷺ said, "La siyama liman lam yafrudhu min al-layl," that there is no fasting for the person who did not make it a mandatory upon themselves the night before. Meaning, they didn't have the intention the night before. Now again, don't freak out. Most, probably 99.9%, if not 100% of people that are fasting are going to have the intention from the night before. And the intention is in your heart, and it's merely being aware what you're doing the next day, right? So, if you don't, there's no specific wording for it. There's nothing that you specifically have to say. But when when you're making your preparations, you're setting your alarm, I got to wake up for suhoor the next day. These are all indications that you already have the intention. So just being aware of the fact that tomorrow is another day of fasting for me, and preparing for it, that is an indication that your intention is there. But again, what's not okay is you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I gotta fast today, right? That kind of interaction with Ramadan is not okay. That clearly shows that you're not engaged in what you're doing, and inshallah that's not the case with any of us. But you have to be mindful. If you have children, remind them, hey, by the way, tomorrow is fasting, we're going to wake you up for suhoor. Now they know, and now they're prepared, and they have that intention, inshallah ta'ala. And then we go on to who is obligated to fast. Before I go on to this part, if there are any questions you guys have, you can ask them in the comments. At any time while I'm talking, just put those questions in the comments that are related, inshallah ta'ala. I can see them, and I can slow down a little bit, or make sure that I didn't, if I missed something that you had a question on, we can get that as well. So I'll pause a little bit just to see if we have any questions about what we've spoken about so far. Also gives me a chance to drink some of my coffee, inshallah. Okay, so I don't see any questions. Yeah, if you have any questions, guys, just put them in the comments, plug them in, and I'll be keeping a record of them, or I can stop and answer them as I'm going. I know I tend to, once I start, and once you have like no direct audience in front of you, it's just very easy to think like you're talking to yourself, and so you just kind of keep on going. Subhanallah. So important. It's such blessings in actual live gatherings, not like live streaming gatherings. All right, I'll keep going here, inshallah ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so we're going to go now to who is obligated to fast, who must fast, and who are the people that are exempt from fasting. So when we talk about who is obligated to fast, any obligations in Islam are on the following people. These are defined as anyone who is Muslim, anyone who is mukallaf, and anyone who is qadir, right? And so these are the three things here. Excuse me. Muslim is obvious, so anyone who follows the religion of Islam. But there is a reason why they mention this, especially when it comes to fasting, the scholars, why they bring it up. You are a Muslim, you're fasting in Ramadan, but let's say somebody converts in the month of Ramadan. We have a lot of converts, mashallah, in our community, and I'm pretty sure that some of you did convert in Ramadan, and I actually remember that. And so, what if somebody accepts Islam in Ramadan, now they've become Muslim, 15 days of Ramadan have gone by, are they obligated to fast, or are they not obligated to fast? Now, by the text of our scripture and all of this, anyone who is Muslim must do what they're supposed to do in terms of following the religion of Islam, right? So as soon as somebody becomes Muslim, even if it's in Ramadan, they are obligated to fast, right? They are obligated to fast. Again, if they also meet the other two criteria, which is being mukallaf and qadir. We'll explain that in a second. But when someone becomes a Muslim, then now they have to pray, they have to fast. They're expected to, all the obligations of Islam that are there are they do apply to them. However, we have to be very careful because for a new Muslim, telling them to do, listing out to them all their obligations the day they become a Muslim is probably going to be extremely overwhelming, and it's not something that is from the wisdom of our Sharia, it's from the wisdom of our faith. So we want to take things little bit at a time. Remember, this is a brand new person to the faith of Islam. They may not have even known that fasting was something they have to do, because the reason they're coming to Islam might be the theology makes sense. Allah and His Prophet makes sense, right? This is a beautiful religion. This is what I want to do. It might be the prayer that, these are the things that tend to bring people to Islam. Ramadan is usually like a what moment for them, because they're like, I can't eat or drink, for 16, 14 hours a day. That's, if that's what you go out and tell people about Islam, you might get some mixed reactions, right? But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides who He wills. Once they come to Islam, it is obligatory, but this is where we tell people that if you are aware of a convert to Islam, you bring them to your religious leaders, right? You bring them to your imams, your ustadas, the people that are knowledgeable in the community, and you let them work with them based on, when they can or cannot or should not start their fasting, right? And again, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرِ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرِ. We read this in the ayah. It's Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah intends for you ease. Allah does not intend for you difficulty. And so for a person who's never fasted before in their life, it's very important to make sure that we're very careful about what we tell them. And so it's always best to bring them to your imams and your ustadas or your religiously literate people in the community to let them deal with them with wisdom. Because again, we may tell them, you know what, it's fine. You don't have to fast the next day. And then, we can encourage them to make these days up in later on throughout the year. But we have to be very wise and make sure that the bigger picture here, that this person stays attached to Islam, is what is being taken care of. So you have to be Muslim to be obligated to fast. You have to be mukallaf. Mukallaf means you've reached the age of maturity or puberty, as it's commonly understood. And the signs of maturity are normal things, for boys. Anything that's the whatever the signs of puberty basically are the signs of maturity. If by the age of 15 you're not seeing any of these signs, 15 is the maximum limit, right? According to the Hanbali school, 15 is the maximum limit. But by age 15, even if you don't see any signs of puberty, that child is now considered mukallaf. It's mature, it's baligh. Then he has or she has to now abide by the things that are obligatory in Islam on individuals. So, but again, whenever children reach the age of puberty, then they are obligated now to pray. They're obligated to fast. They're obligated for other things. If they have money, they must give zakat, right? I don't know how many of our 14, 15-year-olds are making bucks out there, but if they do, and they have the nisab, then they would be obligated to give zakat. It's important for them to be aware of their responsibilities. They're individually responsible as well. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith about salah, he said, that teach them or encourage them to pray, your children, at the age of 7. Discipline them at the age of 10 for it, meaning show them their consequences. This is very, very important. This is something we take seriously. And that's, all of that is technically probably before they even reach the age of maturity, right? And so that's by the age of 10, they're ready to go. It's a normal habit. They're not surprised. They're not being told when they reach the age of puberty that you have to do certain things. So anything you want them to do as adults, start them off at 7. Start disciplining them for it at 10, so that they can get into a regular habit of doing it. That is just a wise way of getting things done. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep our children, all of them, guided on this faith. And then the third person, or the third person that's obligated to fast, you're Muslim, you're mukallaf, you're mature, you're an adult basically, and then you're qadir. Qadir means you are capable of doing this responsibility or this obligation. So qadir here would be, number one, mentally capable. So they're not people that have mental disabilities to the point where they can't comprehend what they're supposed to do, etc., etc., and also physically capable. And that's where the exceptions come in of people that are sick, etc., right? So if you're Muslim, you're an adult, you're mature, and you are physically and mentally capable of fasting, then you would fast, right? You would have to fast. Fasting is now an obligation on you. Now, if we take this into account, who are the people that are exempt from fasting? The first one that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا. If anyone amongst you is a marid, if anyone amongst you is ill or sick. So the people that are sick are the first category of people that are exempted from having to fast. Now, there is some explanation we're going to give here. If the sickness or the illness is not life-threatening and it's not permanent, meaning it's going to go away over time. So let's say you come down with the cold, right? The cold is not life-threatening, and the cold is not going to stay around forever. We know that. In this situation, you have a choice. You can either choose not to fast, because obviously if you need to take medicine, or you need to kind of take liquids and fluids, etc., fasting might be more harmful for you, may make you weaker, may make you more sick, etc. If that's the case, if that's how you feel, you have the choice. You can choose not to fast, or you can choose to fast. If you can handle it for that day, you can choose to fast, right? If you don't fast, you would make up the day after Ramadan, before the next Ramadan. We're going to talk about that hopefully maybe next week. But you're going to make up the day before the next Ramadan. Now, if your illness is something that is life-threatening, meaning it's something that's very, if you were to fast, you would create more harm to yourself. The doctors told you, do not fast because this is bad for you. You have to take medication. You have to have something, nutrition going in your body, etc. Or you have an illness that causes you difficulty if you fast, and there's no it's not going to go away over time. So if you have, for example, diabetes and you need to have nutrition, right? And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how all that stuff works, but it's the principles here that are important. You need to talk to your medical professionals, your doctor, to make sure. But this is the category here. If fasting is going to be harmful for you, because of your illness, and your illness is not like the cold. It's not going to be here for 3 or 4 days. No, this is something that you're living with, taking medication for, just something you're managing, for years now or throughout your life, or you're expecting to manage it for, a long period of time. Then you do not have to fast. You have the choice. If you can bear fasting, you can. So let's say you can't fast every day, but you can fast some of the days, right? And so your doctor gives you the okay. You know what? You can fast every other day, or every 2 days, or whatever, right? Or you can fast for a week and then take a week, or something like this. Whatever you can do safely, you absolutely can fast. And whatever you can't, you would do the same thing. If you can't, you would just make up the days when you can. But if you cannot fast at all because it's harmful for you, then you have the option of fidya, and that is feeding a poor person for each day that is missed. And that cost is the same as roughly the cost of zakatul fitr, which is like I think it was $10 in the past years. It'll probably be $10 again this year. So you would pay $10 for a day of every day that you missed fasting. Now you're doing this because you cannot make up the fast, right? If you can make up the fast, you make up the fasting. But if you cannot make up the fast because of old age, it's not, you're not going to get any younger, you're going to get older, and fasting will become even more difficult for you. You have an illness that's not going to get any better, so you're not going to be able to fast even next Ramadan because it's something you've been struggling with for years. So you can't make up fast. This is where you pay the fidya. This is where you pay, this, or give the fidya. And the fidya, by the way, when I say pay, it's to feed a poor person for every day that you've missed. The cost of it, if you were to do the whole month of Ramadan, would be about $300. There's a couple ways to do it. One, you can give the money to, or buy the food product and give it to the person so that they can cook the food themselves, or you can cook the meal for them and feed them, right? Or you can now, in our times, take that money and give it to an organization that is going to put it towards feeding poor people, right? Don't just give somebody the money. The fidya is feeding a poor person. It's for food. It's for giving them food. And any of the obligatory charities that we have to give in Islam, anything that's obligatory, is going to our Muslim community, right? So we want to give it to an organization that's going to feed, the poor Muslims out there, that's going to provide for them food. And so ICNA Relief, by the way, I believe does this. They take money for fidya, and so that's an organization you can give to. You can give this overseas to organizations that will be feeding people, because there are a lot of people that need food throughout this world. There's no shortage of people that need food, and there's no shortage of places where you can give your fidya, so it can go to the cause of feeding poor people for every day that you've missed. And Allah in the ayah says, فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. If you give more than what is required of you, that is better for you, right? That is just, if you give more, you get more, right? So even though you're only obligated to feed one poor person, but you can afford to feed 5 poor people for every day that you've missed, that is better for you. That's your ajr, that's your great deeds in Ramadan that you're doing extra, right? And so we're all encouraged to do extra in Ramadan anyways. So it's a good idea to do extra more than what you're required to do. So that's the first category of people that are exempt from fasting. The second person is the person that is traveling. Now, in our time, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difficulty on people that are traveling, but because our scripture gives this exemption, the exemption still exists. So, if you are traveling, you have the choice to fast or not to fast. Whether or not it's going to be difficult for you, or it's going to be easy for you, you have the choice. But you must make up the day after Ramadan. You have to make up the day sometime after Ramadan. And it's as simple as that. If you were in our Salah class, we defined what travel was. We talked a lot about it. Basically, the view that I follow as well is, travel is whatever is considered travel by your custom and your culture, right? That is what travel is. The classical view of 48, 49 miles or 50 miles still valid because usually traveling involves that distance anyways, right? But if you're going to pack up your bags and go somewhere else, and what we call travel is travel, right? What we call a commute is not travel, it's just a commute, right? So if I'm driving 30 miles here, 30 miles there, I'm actually traveling 60 miles, right? But if it's a normal thing every day for me to do for work, that's a commute, that's not travel, right? And so we want to be careful about that. So whatever we call travel is travel. You go on a business trip, I'm traveling for business, like and we use these terminologies very commonly. That's what travel is. So you have the choice. My advice is if it's not difficult, then go ahead and fast because it's not the month of Ramadan is the month that obedience is made easier for you. It's easy to come up with an excuse to delay making up your fast afterwards, right? So if it's not going to be difficult, go ahead and fast. You're fasting in the month of Ramadan, but again, you have the choice, right? You have the choice. We mentioned old age, so if there's old age that's going to be causing harm for the fasting person, and again, because Allah says, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. If you can fast, even if you're old and you're elderly, but you can fast, you can handle the fasting, it's better for you to fast. But again, if it's going to be harmful, then again, they can feed a poor person for each day that is missed. The other exemption are women who are menstruating or experiencing postpartum bleeding. So fasting during menses, just like prayer, is not allowed. But the difference is that prayer does not have to be made up for women. Fasting has to be made up for women, and this is understood from our sahabiyat, our female companions, and they're teaching us, how the Prophet ﷺ taught them these rituals about their faith. One ruling that comes up in some of the schools is if a woman is going through her menses, but she becomes pure during the daytime in one of the days of Ramadan, what should she do? Right now she's pure, the menses have stopped, and now you have 5-6 hours remaining in the daytime. What should she do? If she was not fasting before, should she continue to fasting? There is a view that says she should refrain from everything that a fasting person would refrain from, and make up that day as well. But again, this is something that you have to understand. It's probably not mandatory, right? It's probably absolutely not mandatory that because you've not been fasting the whole day anyways, and since you have to make up the day, that means you weren't fasting the day in the first place. But it's something out of respect for the day of Ramadan, just the fact that because I am pure, and this is a time that when you're pure, you would be acting in this way. So out of an extra care for just reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His rulings, this is the recommendation that is given. And pregnant and nursing women, again, if fasting, now here's the thing, if fasting will not affect the health of the mother or the child, fasting is still mandated. This is what our scholars have told us, but there needs to be a direct correlation with your physician here. If you feel like you're able to fast, that's one thing. That's how you feel. But if your doctor tells you, you know what, this is not going to be safe for you, and get an opinion of a Muslim doctor that understands what fasting is, what it does to your body, etc., and who understands also the weight of the feeling of what it's like to miss a fast, right? It's not something that's easy for a lot of us to do. But if your doctor says don't fast, right? You have an exemption that you should not fast. If you feel like it's going to be harmful for you or difficult for you and your child, your unborn child, then do not fast. You have the exemption from not doing that, and you would make up the day later on in Ramadan. And I believe that should be the categories of people that are exempt from fasting. If there's one that I missed, I ask Allah to forgive. But we'll cover just a couple more things here, and then we'll take some questions. So the last two things I want to cover is suhoor and iftar. Suhoor and iftar. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Tasahharu fa inna fi suhuri baraka." Have a meal, have suhoor, have a meal before Fajr time, before daybreak, because there is barakah in having that meal. So it is not mandatory to have a suhoor, to have a meal in the morning before you begin your day of fasting, but it is a highly preferred sunnah because the Prophet ﷺ said there is barakah in this, right? And so barakah, we know, is blessing, and is goodness, is value, something that has value. So you're going to get more value out of your day, more barakah, more blessing in your day, more value in your time, etc., because you're doing something that gives you that barakah. So even if it's with a date, even if it's with a sip of water, but we should. And I think our nutritionists and our healthcare professionals will tell you should have a meal in the morning. If you're going to go 14-16 hours of fasting, don't start off on an empty stomach. Have something to kind of give you the energy. And again, it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's having you empathize with the poor here, Another one of the benefits of Ramadan is that we get some kind of empathy, some kind of compassion for those that have to go hungry. But He's allowing you to have a meal early in the morning and allowing you to have a meal, after the nighttime, and still you feel hunger, right? Still you feel hunger, and so, but it's a huge blessing to be able to partake in whenever you can have the meal. It's preferred to wait right until before Fajr to have the suhoor, even if it's with a cup of water, etc. So again, the closer to Fajr, the closer to the time of fasting beginning that you have the suhoor, the better, the more it is preferred. And if you wake up, and this is for people that wake up and they're in a state of what's called janaba, ritual impurity. It's a question that comes up quite often. So, for any reason, you can be in a state of major ritual impurity, a state of janaba, and you are required now to make ghusl to become pure. But you wake up in the morning and you're in this state. Can you still have your suhoor and start your fasting? Yes, you can have your suhoor, start your fasting, but you would take your ghusl, your bath, before obviously you pray Salatul Fajr, because you're not purified until you take your ghusl or your bath. And when it comes to breaking the fast, iftar, it is preferred to break the fast as soon as the time comes in. So the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يزال الناس بخير ما عجل الفطر. People will continue to be blessed with goodness as long as they hasten in breaking the fast, as long as they are breaking the fast on time. I'll give you a question here. If a lady's menstrual cycle lasts longer than expected, what is the ruling regarding when she can restart fasting? Does she have to make up those days or pay for the fidya? It's just the making up the days. If her menstrual cycle lasts longer than expected, then it's just that you cannot fast during that cycle, and so you would make up the same number of days that you missed. And inshallah, is also, by the way, so for our sisters, you have Ustada Fatima that is available to us. So please make sure that you are, any more detailed questions. Definitely, I would recommend asking Ustada Fatima and Dr. Shella, who is also on our religious affairs committee. But again, something as simple for this, I can let you know that again, whatever days you miss because of the menstrual cycle are the days you would make up, and you don't have to pay extra. You have to make up those days of fasting, inshallah ta'ala. Breaking the fast, it is preferred to have iftar as soon as possible. There is a hadith Qudsi on iftar too, by the way, in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, in the collection of Imam al-Tirmidhi, in ahabba ibadi ilayya a'jaluhum fitra, that the most beloved slaves of mine are those who hasten in breaking the fast. So those who break the fast as soon as it is time. As soon as it is time. And we say this again because the Prophet ﷺ understood us very well. And one of the things the Prophet ﷺ understood about us is that we may try to be more righteous than what is necessary, right? And this is one of the things the Prophet ﷺ himself dealt with when 3 people came to his house and he wasn't there, and they asked about his worship, and his worship was, again, he's a prophet of Allah, his worship was something that was just, probably incapable of other people doing. So one of them said, I'm going to fast every day. One of them said, I'm going to not sleep at night, I'm just going to pray. And one of them said, I'm not ever going to get married, I'm just going to devote my life into the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he finds these people and he tells them, where are the people that said such and such? They come to him and he says, look, I am the best of you. I am the best of you in creation and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I fast some days and I don't fast some days. I spend nights in prayer, but I also spend, time sleeping. And I have gotten married, right? And I have gotten married. So don't think that you're going, why are you trying to do something that is beyond what, again, just past what I'm already setting an example for you. Yes, the Prophet's example of worship was something that no other human being can match ever, but at the same time, he's giving us a practical example as well, and doesn't want us to overreach when it comes to thinking that we're being more righteous, right? So you're not going to be more righteous if you break your fast later. You're not going to be more righteous if you don't have suhoor in the morning, right? It's actually the opposite. There's barakah in having suhoor. The sunnah is to have suhoor. More righteousness is in eating the meal at the morning time, and the righteousness, or being more pious, is actually in breaking your iftar on time. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you here. You break it on the time I've told you to break it, because I've given you the barakah and the blessing to be able to do so. So do it on the time that it is. Don't delay. Don't wait 10 minutes later and then do it, because that's not what you're being asked to do, and you're not getting any more righteousness out of it. Again, because the point again is not just to not eat or drink or stay hungry, right? There are other things that are prohibited in this time as well, and it's an opportunity to improve your character. The sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to break the fast with ripe dates. If you don't have ripe dates, then dried dates. If you don't have dried dates, then with water. And this is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do commonly, what we know of his sunnah. And so we do that out of love for our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we do get rewarded for doing the things we do out of love. Copying our Prophet, following his way. This is something you're absolutely rewarded for. In the Muslim world, alhamdulillah, for the most part, this is how we break our fast. We break our fast with dates, and I do believe there are incredible medical benefits for this. A date is, a ripe date is soft, something that kind of helps your digestive system. Water, to get warmed up before you stuff the pakoras and the kunafe and all that kind of stuff down your throat, right? Which again, we'll probably want to take it easy on, even in Ramadan. One piece of advice we always give people is don't spend so much time eating iftar that you're praying Maghrib at its absolutely latest time. It is preferred to pray the salawat, the prayers, in their earliest times as much as possible. And so have your iftar, eat something to break your fast, and then perform your prayer. Again, this is all about ibadah, this is about worship, this is about coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So break your fast, and don't make breaking your fast about eating a huge meal. Break your fast, go to your prayer, and then you have, now you have the night, and you can kulu washrabu hatta yatabayyana lakum al-khayt al-abyad min al-khayt al-aswad min al-fajr. Now you can eat and drink until fajr time, right? You can eat and drink until fajr. You have the whole night. You don't have just that 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes to stuff everything. You have the whole night, inshallah ta'ala, to have your meals. And again, it's important to have them in a good and balanced way, inshallah. The time right before iftar is a time where dua is accepted. The Prophet ﷺ said, ثَلَاثَةٌ لَا تُرَدُّ دَعْوَتُهُمْ الصَّائِمُ حَتَّى يُفْطِرُ. There are three whose dua is not rejected. And the first one he mentioned is الصَّائِمُ حَتَّى يُفْطِرُ, the fasting person until he breaks his fast. And so the whole day of Ramadan, by the way, is a time where your duas are being accepted, but specifically right before you break your fast, right before Maghrib time comes in, that should be a time devoted for dua, for dhikr of Allah, for something, because you're about to now end your day of fasting, right? And so this is a time where duas are accepted. This is a time you want to try to make exclusively for your family, to sit around and just focus on some kind of dhikr or some kind of dua, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his bounty, etc., etc. Extremely, extremely important. Don't waste this time. This is a crucial time that you have in the daytime. The other two categories, by the way, al-imam al-adil, a just ruler, wa da'watul madhlum, and the prayer of an oppressed person. These are the prayers that are not rejected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what we had for today, and inshallah next week we'll cover what breaks the fast, because people have a lot of questions on those. What ruins the fast, doesn't necessarily break it, but what violates the spirituality of the fast. And we'll talk about qada, making up the mistakes of fasting, tarawih, especially now because we might have no tarawih in the masjid. We have that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove this trial from us as soon as possible. But if we don't have tarawih in the masjid, it's important to understand how, what tarawih is and how we can lead it at home, inshallah ta'ala, as well. And some other things. Now, if you guys have questions about these topics that we're going to talk about next week, send us a private message on our Facebook, or email me at imam@roswellmasjid.org. But get those questions to me so that we can build our talk around the questions that people have, inshallah ta'ala. And I will pause, and if you guys have any questions about what we spoke about today, or anything that you think I may have missed, please bring those up so we can address them, inshallah. Inshallah, no questions, man. This is interesting. Ramadan is a time where people have so many questions, mashallah. I'll take that as a good sign that I was extremely clear in what I was supposed to present, inshallah ta'ala. Wa iyyakum. All right, as always, guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and comment here. Send me an email, imam at Roswell Masjid, or you can direct message us on Facebook. You can reach out to me on Instagram. Just look for Imam Rashid Anwar. There's lots of ways to get in touch, inshallah ta'ala. Your staff is still available to you. If you guys have any needs, again, Ustada is still available. If you have any needs, you can email her, ustada at roswellmasjid.org. These emails should be on our website. Let us know if we can do anything for you guys, inshallah ta'ala. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow us to have a beautiful Ramadan, no matter how it comes over us. This is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we should absolutely have the intention to make the most of our opportunity that we have. And again, Ramadan is a month where the Prophet, and I didn't share this in the beginning, it is a month where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man sama Ramadana imanu wa ihtisaba, ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi, that whoever fasts the month of Ramadan, imanu wa ihtisaba, they fast the month of Ramadan because they have faith in Allah Azza wa Jal. They fast the month of Ramadan accounting for the reward that they will get of Ramadan. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whatever preceded them of their sins will be forgiven. So it's an opportunity to come out forgiven for our sins, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us this opportunity, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.